With the growth of air travel over the years, a lot of big cities around the world have developed a dual airport system. Chicago, Beijing, and Paris all have two commercial airports to distribute air traffic. In all of these cities, one airport is bigger and more focused on longer and international routes, while the other is for shorter and domestic routes. The same system is followed by almost all major cities in the world, including Shanghai, Istanbul, and Houston. But when it comes to London, it is a completely different story. With an unbelievable 6 airports, London has the highest number of commercial airports out of any city in the world. These airports are Heathrow, Gatwick, Luton, Stansted, London City, and Southend. Now, it's important to mention that out of the 6 airports, 4 are outside of London City, and they're not just outside of the city, they're also pretty far. But that doesn't mean that they are not London's airport. That's because sometimes airports need to be placed outside of cities because of space issues, and it's pretty common among big cities. The main thing to consider is that these airports are still serving the people coming and going to London, which makes them London airports even if they are out of the city. With that being cleared, the number of airports that serve London is very unusual, and that's because there has never been enough demand in any city in the world to go beyond 2 or 3 airports at max. China, for example, has more than 5 cities that are bigger than London, yet none of them have more than 2 commercial airports. Even the biggest city in the world, Tokyo, with a population 3 times larger than London, has 2 commercial airports. So why does London have 6 airports when clearly 2 airports would do the job? Well, London has had all these airports for a very long time, and it is because of a lot of factors, but it all started in World War II. Talking about the World War, let me introduce you to War Thunder. War Thunder is the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made. You can take command of over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships from 10 major nations, ranging from biplanes and armored cars of the 1920s to the fighter jets and main battle tanks of today. The game offers 3 distinct modes, each ramping up realism progressively. Arcade suits those craving fast-paced matches with enhanced vehicle performance and simplified physics, while Simulator mode ditches all guardrails for the ultimate challenge. Realistic mode is the perfect middle ground, striking a balance between intensity and authenticity. Play War Thunder for free on PC, PlayStation, or Xbox now by using the link in the video description. New and returning players that haven't played in 6 months will receive a massive bonus pack across all platforms that includes multiple premium vehicles, the exclusive vehicle decorator Eagle of Valor, 100,000 Silver Lions, and 7 days of premium account. It's only available for a limited time, so don't miss it. Now, getting back to the video. In the Second World War, all the airports in and around London were used as Air Force bases. And there weren't just 6 Air Force bases, but several more. Some of these bases were airfields and aerodromes before being transformed into Air Force bases for the war, and the others were built as Air Force bases. After the World War ended, these Air Force bases weren't much use, and commercial air travel was becoming a promising transport option. So London started transforming these bases into commercial airports. The first airport they transformed after the war was built to be London's main airport, now known as Heathrow. Then, a couple of years later, the city decided to build another airport to support traffic at Heathrow, and they transformed another Air Force base into Gatwick International Airport. After a few years in the 60s, air traffic saw a boom, and the city officials realized that 2 airports wouldn't be enough and they would need another airport. So they decided to transform another base, this time in the north, to Stansted Airport. But to build a 3rd airport for a single city is not something that you saw back then. Even today, most cities can operate on 2 airports. So how come London needed a 3rd airport 60 years ago? Well, that's because both Heathrow and Gatwick were small airports and they couldn't be expanded because both of them were surrounded by residential or industrial areas. And anticipating the growth in air travel, the officials thought building a new airport would be a good choice because it would serve the northeast region of London and also reduce traffic at Heathrow and Gatwick. But while London had to build a third airport, most similar-sized cities didn't have to go that route. For example, when Paris built their second airport, they started with 2 runways and left plenty of space for future expansion, and as air travel grew, they just added new terminals and runways. That was possible because they specifically chose a place like this to build the airport. But in the case of London, the airports were built only where there was an airbase before. And that's exactly the reason why London ended up having so many airports. They just didn't plan to build an airport from the ground up and kept transforming airbases, which were pretty small, so they had to build more and more. If they had properly planned out an airport after building Heathrow with enough space to accommodate 5 or 6 runways, then London probably wouldn't have this many airports. If you look at London right now, the combined number of runways they have is 8, including all 6 airports. Comparing this to America, Houston's 2 airports have combined 7 runways, and Chicago's O'Hare Airport has 8 runways alone. So statistically, London needed a massive airport. But Heathrow and Gatwick were built so early in the aviation age that they couldn't possibly anticipate how big air travel would become. This situation didn't occur with most cities around the world, probably because they built their airports later in time or they had the option to expand. But Moscow shared some similar problems as London. When the Moscow region was rapidly developing, each time the city needed a significant increase in air traffic, it had to build a new airport, as the old ones were surrounded by lands being used for some purpose. This led to Moscow ending up with 4 commercial airports. The only difference with London is that they had several Air Force bases with built-up runways, so they chose a new base each time rather than building a new one. However, this trend came to an end after Stansted, because after Stansted, they built a new airport in the city from the ground up. This airport was an opportunity because there was this empty space on an old dock that was conveniently runway-shaped and very close to the city center. The airport's location, being close to the financial district of London, meant that it could focus specifically on business travelers. But that was not the only reason. They also wanted to relieve the passenger rush from Heathrow and Gatwick as much as they could. That's why they added London to the name of Luton Airport in the 90s. Before the 90s, Luton Airport wasn't even considered one of London's airports, not because it didn't have a London in its name, but because it was simply built for a different region. Luton Airport was never meant for London. Only Heathrow, Gatwick, City Airport, and Stansted were meant to serve London. But because all these airports were getting pretty busy, they had to develop Luton as London's airport. For that, they rebranded the airport with London in its name and developed the airport itself with a new terminal so it could handle more flights. They did the same thing with the Southend Airport in the late 2000s when they changed its name to London Southend Airport and built a new terminal. They also added London in front of Stansted Airport, but it didn't change much passenger volume because Stansted was already serving London and was a developed airport. They added the name just to make it a London airport officially. This ended the complicated development of all 6 airports serving London. Today, Heathrow and Gatwick are still the biggest airports, both serving a total of 1,100 flights daily. Heathrow is running at full capacity, and Gatwick is not far either. Stansted and Luton have become hubs for budget airlines with a combined total of about 450 flights a day. The city airport sees a mix of airlines, mostly for business travel, and Southend serves very few routes, with only one airline operating passenger routes. Now, one question that comes into a lot of people's minds is, why doesn't London build a bigger airport and close some other ones? Well, that's because, in today's time, it's almost impossible to build an airport on a large scale anywhere around London. First, it is very hard to find an area that big. And second, areas that are not built are usually protected from any development by Greenbelt designation. Then there are protests, money issues, political challenges, all of which make it extremely hard to make an airport. The interesting question is, What will London do when they max out with these airports? Will they go through the challenges to build a new one, or will they try and expand one of the current airports? I guess we'll have to wait a while to see what happens. Once again, shout out to War Thunder for sponsoring today's video. Make sure to check out War Thunder now for free on PC, PlayStation, or Xbox, and use the link in the video description to register. Those of you who are new or haven't played in 6 months will receive a massive bonus pack across all platforms, including multiple premium vehicles, in-game currency, and more.